And this comes straight from the early playbook of, well, Michael Jordan.
And the context here is so important because this wasn't some huge global rejection. This was local, it was personal, and it happened when he was just 15 years old.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. Where are we?
We're in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's the fall of 1978. And a sophomore, Michael Jordan, is trying out for the basketball team at Emsley A. Laney High School.
High school tryouts. The anxiety is real.
It is. And you've got about 50 kids, all competitive, all hopeful, packed into this gym. And they're all fighting for just 15 spots on the varsity roster. And you have to remember, most of those spots were kind of already spoken for by the older guys, the juniors and seniors.
Established players.
Yes, exactly. And Jordan, at 15, he wasn't the force of nature we remember yet. The reports from that time, they describe him as, yes, incredibly quick, fiercely competitive, very driven.
You could see the spark.
You could see the spark, but he was still growing. He was only about 5'10" at the time, still working on his jump shot. He wasn't delivering the kind of high leverage production that the varsity coach needed for that season. They weren't looking for long-term potential. They needed players who were ready to win now.
And then the decision comes. The dreaded list goes up on the wall.
The list on the bulletin board. And he finds his name, but it's not under varsity. He's been put on the junior varsity team, the JV roster.
Okay, so technically not cut from the program entirely.
Not cut, no.
Yeah.
But for a competitor with his intensity, it felt like a total crushing rejection. But here's the detail, the thing that adds the real psychological sting.
Go on.
His friend, another sophomore named Leroy Smith, who happened to be 6'7", he made the varsity team.
Oof. That's the knife twist.
That's the knife twist. It's the comparison. It's not just some faceless committee rejecting you. It's seeing your peer, someone you practice with, move past you, get into the room you wanted to be in. That kind of thing doesn't just disappoint you. It can embarrass you.
Yeah, I think most of us in that moment, we'd spiral or quit. Or we'd make that rejection our entire personality for the next 6 months, right?
Complaining about the height bias, the coaches, the politics.
Looking for sympathy.
Yeah.
Building that narrative of being the victim.
Right. But this is the hinge. This is what we have to study. Jordan refused to do that. He didn't treat it as a story about unfairness. He didn't chase sympathy. He chased competence.
Okay, so what did he do?
He took that searing pain, that humiliation, and he immediately translated it into a clear, actionable sentence. The voice in his head wasn't, "You're not good enough." The message became, "You're not undeniable yet."
I like that. Not undeniable yet.
And the blueprint that came out of that was purely strategic. It was, if they won't put me on that team, I will become the reason they can't afford to ignore me.
That quiet turn from bitterness
Yeah.
to a structured plan.
That's it right there.
That is the single most valuable lesson in this entire deep dive.
But, okay, let's be real. How do you do that? How do you manage that immediate emotional rush? It's easy for us to sit here and say, be analytical, but you're a kid, you're standing in that hallway, you feel gutted, your brain's alarm system is just screaming. How do you flip that switch? That's where you have to learn to see it as a snapshot. We have to train ourselves, you and I, everyone listening, to recognize that disrespect is almost never an objective measure of your ultimate worth.
It just feels like it is.
It feels like it, but it's not. It's a high-fidelity snapshot of how someone ranks you right now, based on their biases, their constraints, their limited information. The Laney coach needed a 6'7" player more than a 5'10" one at that moment. It wasn't the universe declaring Jordan's destiny.
So if you treat it like a verdict, like a final judgment on your soul, you're stuck. You start trying to please the critic instead of getting better at the thing you want to do.
Exactly. You fall into that spiral. But if you train yourself, and it does take training, to treat it like data, then you can convert that energy. You contrast the emotional verdict, "I'm not good enough, they hate me," with the analytical data query.
The data query being,
In this context, with these constraints, I didn't make the cut. What specific, measurable skills would make me undeniable next time?
so Jordan's response wasn't just rage, it was analysis.
It was analytical training. He knew he needed more strength, better body control, more consistency. He isolated the data points from the rejection and built a training plan around them.
Which means we have to consciously apply this renaming formula every single time. We have to strip the emotional baggage from the slight and just define the problem.
We have to. And the sources give us these high-leverage translations that act like mental emergency brakes. For instance, the thought, "They disrespected me," must immediately automatically become,
They underestimated me.
Exactly. And that's a huge power shift. You're acknowledging their mistake, the underestimation, while taking ownership of proving them wrong.
Okay, what's another one?
"They shut me out." becomes they gave me a clear, measurable target. Suddenly, that vague feeling of exclusion is gone. Now you have a defined goal. Get that spot, achieve that standard.
And the last one was my favorite. They don't believe in me.
That one becomes the ultimate declaration of self-reliance. I don't need their belief to train.
Wow. That's real freedom. Detaching your effort from needing someone else's applause.
That's mental freedom. It's the core of it.
So that's the takeaway for you listening.
Yeah.
It's this immediate active step. You rewrite the insult. A pitch gets rejected because it was, say, too theoretical. You don't tell yourself, they think I'm a fraud.
No.
You tell yourself, I need to add 10 specific, concrete case studies to make the argument undeniable.
And there's another tool here, which is banking the moment. Jordan kept these slights. He remembered them, not because he was obsessed with bitterness.
He wasn't stewing in it.
No, but because he needed to remember the promise he made to himself in that hallway. And we should all have a private receipt list of these slights.
A receipt list. I like that.
But, crucially, this list isn't for showing other people. It's not for brooding over every night. It's just there to remember that initial spark, that vow of competence you made for when you need the motivation to do the hard work nobody sees.
But how do you stop that list from just becoming a grievance journal? You know, the line between motivation and obsession can be pretty thin.
The difference is the orientation. Grievance is backward-looking. It's all about the story of the wrong that was done to you.
Right.
Momentum is forward-looking. It's about the action required to make that wrong irrelevant. So the rule for the receipt list is simple. Every time you look at a receipt, you have to immediately translate that emotion into one concrete task for the next hour.
Ah, so it's a trigger for action, not for feeling sorry for yourself.
Exactly. If you just start dwelling on the story, close the list. It's a tool for ignition, not a diary for resentment. It's about collecting proof, not sympathy. That's the Jordan principle.
That's a perfect transition because we move from that internal promise to yourself to the external undeniable proof.
Which brings us to our next idea, the Boyle principle, which is simply make them listen.
Yeah, this takes us to a very different scene. We're in Glasgow, Scotland, April 2009, on the stage of Britain's Got Talent.
Okay, so the environment just built for instant judgment. You've got the bright lights, the massive crowd.
The cynical judges. And out walks Susan Boyle. She's 47. She's dressed very plainly, unstyled hair, and her nervous humor and movements, they're immediately read by everyone in that room. Well, as awkwardness, as incompetence.
And you can see it. You can see the visible judgment. The audience is snickering. You see people rolling their eyes. It's just this immediate, comfortable dismissal.
A very specific kind of disrespect, too. It's based entirely on assumptions. Judging the book by its cover before she's even done anything.
Exactly. They were trained by the format of the show to expect a certain package-polished, young professional. Boyle was none of those things. And the sources later on really dug into how that moment forced this huge public conversation about our own snap judgments.
In that room, the pressure to conform must have been immense. She could have shrunk. She could have apologized for being there.
Trying to win them over with a joke.
Right. But that's what makes this moment so powerful. She didn't do any of that. She didn't argue. She didn't seek their approval. She just started. She said she was going to sing I Dreamed a Dream. She took a breath and she performed.
And what happened next wasn't about her personality. It was a pure demonstration of competence. Her performance didn't convince them to be nicer people. It forced an immediate, powerful recalibration of their entire perception of her.
As the sources said, it silenced the cynicism.
Instantly. And the principle here is this. Excellence, when it's delivered with focus and conviction, it just removes the critic's ability to dismiss you without looking and feeling profoundly foolish.
So disrespect is basically a prediction. They're predicting you won't deliver.
Yeah.
And your only job is to ship a result that breaks that prediction, not to argue with the person who made it.
And that's how you use disrespect as a focus tool. A disrespectful room is noisy. It's pulling you towards self-consciousness. Am I standing weird? Do they think I'm an idiot?
The internal spiral.
That spiral is exactly what they expect. If you buy into that noise, you fold, and their prediction that you're incompetent comes true. They're never challenged.
Okay, but let me challenge this a little. It's one thing to say deliver excellence when you're Susan Boyle and you have this God-given world-class voice just waiting to be unleashed. What about, the listener who's a middle manager or a software developer? Their excellence isn't a 2-minute song.
That's a really important distinction. Excellence here doesn't have to mean some grand artistic perfection. It just means measurable, undeniable output in the right context.
So for the software developer,
Excellence might be shipping a piece of clean, elegant code that solves a huge problem in half the time everyone expected. For the middle manager, it might be one perfectly structured presentation that defines the next quarter's strategy with such clarity that there are no questions left.
So it's not about the scale of the skill, but the delivery of a result that makes it impossible to dismiss you.
Precisely. We all tend to default to trying to win respect through personality first, right? Being charming, being likable, softening our edges so we don't seem threatening.
Yeah, that's the default. It's social.
It's the default because it's easier to activate social skills than deep competence. But the high-leverage habit is to win respect through output. The finished project, the consistent performance. Boyle didn't try to win a likability contest. She forced them to confront their own biases by just executing. She redirected all her energy from, how do I look, to where's my breath?
So the actionable tools have to be about creating that proof moment. How do we structure that?
First, you have to plan a proof moment, not an emotional comeback. You need to identify the one deliverable, the deck, the demo, the prototype, that makes your value completely obvious to your specific critic, even if they don't like you personally.
And second, you have to shrink the stage.
Shrink the stage. Boyle had one song. When you feel judged, don't try to prove everything you know. Focus like a laser on the one thing that wins the room, the one metric, the one message, the one clean example.
And critically, redirecting that nervous energy. When you feel that tremor or you hear that critical voice in your head,
You shift the internal loop. You go from, please like me, to, what is my posture? Am I hitting the key point in my first sentence? It's a practical, physical redirection.
use the disrespect as a trigger.
Use it as a trigger. When you feel that urge to procrastinate on the hard stuff, or you remember that comment from your boss, you tell yourself, this is the exact moment they expect me to fold. And then you immediately do one small thing toward your proof moment. You don't beg them to respect you. You make them revise their own assumptions about you.
This flows perfectly into our third segment, because that excellence requires consistency, and without structure, all that fuel just becomes messy. This brings us to Tom Brady and what we're calling the Brady Principle. Hold the number.
Yeah, we're moving now to the NFL Draft. New York City, April 16th, 2000. For a football player, this is the ultimate judgment day. But for Tom Brady, the hours ticking by, the silence, that was its own form of disrespect.
He just waits and waits. Round 1 goes by, all the big stars. Round 2, round 3, round 4.
Yeah.
The phone doesn't ring.
And by the time you get to the 6th round, that silence isn't just a lack of interest anymore. It feels like the entire league has looked at you, analyzed you, and said, we are unimpressed. We will take 198 other human beings before we take a chance on you.
The league loves prototypes, right? The big, strong, fast guys.
They do. And Brady's scouting reports coming out of college, they said he lacked arm strength, he wasn't mobile, he didn't have the look. And this is where your hope starts to die. You're just thinking, please just give me a chance, any chance.
And the chance finally comes.
Yeah.
Late in the day, Tom Brady is selected, 199th overall.
In the 6th round by the New England Patriots. And that number 199, it's not a feeling. It's not a vague slight. It is a cold, hard, factual label.
It can stick to you like a sentence.
Yeah.
Not franchise QB, but the guy they took as an afterthought.
But the hinge, again, is what he does with that number. He doesn't treat it as a label of who he is. He treats it as a perpetual, undeniable receipt, a personal dare.
It's a record of how many times he was passed over.
And he deliberately turns it into his daily alarm clock, the spark for the work.
And this brings us to what you call the container concept.
Right. Disrespect can be the most powerful fuel you can imagine. But if you don't pour that fuel into a measurable container, a number, a benchmark, a system, it just turns into this generalized bitterness that poisons you from the inside.
Bitterness is grievance without a goal.
That's a great way to put it. You're just spending all this energy relitigating the past instead of using it to grow. Without the structure of the number, the pain of being picked on 199th would just make him chase validation, argue with sports writers.
But with the structure, the number becomes functional. It's a data point to be outworked.
So the principle is this. You don't need everyone's respect. What you need is a repeatable system to convert the feeling of disrespect into reps.
Contrast the default habit-chasing validation with the systemic response.
Exactly. Define a number, set a benchmark, and build a daily practice around it. And Brady didn't just tear up those old negative scouting reports, he famously kept them. Decades later, he'd say reading them still got him fired up.
That's the receipt language, using their exact words or that exact number as an ignition switch, not just a source of rage.
It's structure trumping emotion. He put the disrespect into a precise place, the number 199, and then he made that number serve his training. He didn't fight the feeling with anger. He fought it with cold, hard, consistent work.
Okay, I have to ask, what if the number feels paralyzing? I mean, if you've been rejected 50 times for a job, writing down 50 might just make you feel like a total failure. How do you keep it motivational?
That's a great point. And the 199 concept needs some nuance. It can't just be a symbol of failure. It has to be a factual marker of the gap between you and what the system wanted at that time.
So you reframe the number itself.
You reframe it. If you got rejected 50 times, your 199 might be 14 more rejections until I hit 64, which is the exact number of attempts my hero took before their breakthrough. You change the story the number tells.
So let's get concrete for the listener. How do they create their own 199?
You have to identify one concrete, factual disrespect marker. It has to be specific, not, they don't like my ideas. It has to be, my project proposal received a 3 out of 10 score in the last review. That number is your receipt. Write it down.
And then you build the Prove It dashboard.
Yes. You define 2 or 3 things you can measure that prove you're closing that gap. If the rejection was about technical skill, your metrics are hours of deliberate practice or courses completed. If it was about sales, it's calls made, proposals sent. It has to be objective.
And then the most powerful part, turning triggers into reps.
This is how you operationalize the fuel. Every single time that memory pops up, that anger, that humiliation, you don't sink into it. You have to create a new cognitive loop. Remember, 199, perform 1 rep.
1 paragraph written. 1 5-minute drill.
1 application sent. The goal is to recondition your brain so that the emotional trigger doesn't send you into a spiral of grievance. It sends you into immediate productive action.
And doing that consistently builds momentum. The power of the streak.
Right. Just set a short, defined streak, say 14 days. You're not committing to this obsessive grind for 20 years. You're just building a new habit loop over 2 weeks, from anger to grievance to anger to action. You keep the receipt, and then you systematically outwork the story it tells.
The power of structure. Okay, so now we're moving from these personal slights to something bigger. Structural disrespect, the kind that comes from being excluded. We're calling this the Johnson Principle. Claim your seat.
This takes us to Hampton, Virginia, early 1960s, NASA's Langley campus. And Katherine Johnson is doing absolutely essential mathematics. Her calculations are literally what's making it possible for John Glenn to orbit the Earth.
But she's working inside a system that is structured by hierarchy, by tradition, and by the institutional biases of the time.
Right, so the disrespect here wasn't someone yelling at her or giving her a low number. It was a mission. It was a quiet denial of access.
She was being left off meeting invites.
She was not in the room where her own math was being discussed and turned into life or death decisions. She was treated as, essentially, a human calculator. Execution, not strategy.
And that exclusion problem, it creates this invisible ceiling. I mean, meetings are where the real work happens, where the story gets told, where decisions are made, if you're not in the room.
Then your impact is always capped by how someone else interprets your work. You're misunderstood. You're seen as helpful, but not essential.
So Johnson wants to attend an editorial meeting, a room where traditionally women just didn't go. It was for the white male engineers. And she's up against this quiet, unmovable force of tradition, and this is the hinge.
She delivers one of the most strategically brilliant questions I've ever come across. She didn't go to her supervisor with an emotional plea about her worth or how unfair it was.
She went with pure logic.
Pure, cold, strategic logic. She asks the simple, clean question, is there a law that says I can't go?
Wow. That just cuts through everything. Tradition, preference, unspoken rules.
It does, and that is the core principle right there. Don't argue for your worth, argue for your access.
Explain that.
Well, if there's no written policy, no actual rule against it, then the only thing stopping you is institutional preference. It's just not how we do things here, and preference can be challenged.
Her move was powerful because it forced their hand.
It forced the gatekeeper to either admit the exclusion was arbitrary or invent a new rule on the spot. And since her work was critical to John Glenn's safety, inventing a new rule to keep her out would have been strategically foolish. She leveraged her competence to get into the room.
Let me push back here a little bit. For a lot of people listening, a mid-level employee walking up to their boss and asking, is there a law against this? Could sound, I don't know, aggressive, risky.
That is a crucial concern, and you have to de-risk it. And there are 3 parts to that. First, your competence has to be undeniable, like Johnson's was. Second, you have to frame your request around an organizational outcome, not your personal feelings. And third, the phrasing is everything.
So what's the difference in phrasing between arguing for worth versus arguing for access?
Arguing for worth sounds like this. I deserve to be in that meeting because I have 10 years of experience and I know more than Bob. It's defensive. It's about you.
And it invites an argument.
It does. Arguing for access sounds like this. I need to join the weekly review because if I'm there, I can answer data questions live and we can reduce the risk of a pipeline error by 15%. You make it about efficiency and risk. You take the personal out of it entirely.
So that structural disrespect being left out, it's actually a signal that you're getting close to a higher leverage room.
And your response has to be calm insistence, backed by undeniable competence and framed around what's best for the organization. The default is to get angry, complain to your friends.
Or just disengage.
Right. The strategic response is to see the boundary and say, if decisions are made there, I need to be there to ensure my work is effective. Johnson knew her math was excellent, but her influence required her presence.
So for the listener, what are the actionable tools? How do you ask the log question professionally?
You script it out first. You practice it. I'm finding that decisions are being made in the XYZ meeting that directly impact my deliverables. Is there a policy that prevents me from joining?
And if they say no?
You immediately pivot to the access argument. Great, I think I can help prevent rework and ensure alignment if I'm in the room for just the first 15 minutes.
And you have to build an ally. Johnson's boss was the one who finally said, let her go.
Absolutely. Find one trusted person who has the capital to open that door and give them the strategic reason, the better outcome, so they can argue on your behalf. Disrespect thrives in the shadows. You have to calmly, consistently claim the seat.
A fantastic framework. Okay, finally, we get to the most radical move of all. Embracing the so-called flaw itself. We're calling this the Schwarzenegger principle. Turn flaws into a signature.
We're back in Los Angeles now, 1970s Hollywood. Arnold Schwarzenegger arrives trying to become an actor, and he is just dismissed out of hand. He is the complete opposite of what a leading man was supposed to be back then.
Think Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman.
Exactly. And the agents and studio heads just told him, you will never make it as an actor.
And the criticism was so specific, it was focused on these core parts of his identity.
The sources confirm it was three big things: the heavy Austrian accent, the name they couldn't pronounce, and the physique. They said he was too much. A bodybuilder's body was seen as, like, grotesque or cartoonish for a leading man.
And this highlights what you call the conformity trap.
It's so dangerous. The industry told him you have to be smaller, quieter, and you have to sound American. And his first, very human reaction was to try and do that. He actually hired an accent removal coach.
You tried to sand down the differences.
Which is what we all do. We try to become more palatable to the gatekeepers. But this is the moment of choice. You either destroy yourself trying to fit into their mold, or you decide to win a different way. And the hinge is when he stopped apologizing for being different. He fired the accent coach. He started treating his flaws as raw material.
So the principle is,
don't shrink the trait. They mock design a role or a platform where that trait becomes a weapon. If the world tells you, we don't have a box for you, your job is to build a value proposition that doesn't need their box. It's aggressive strategic branding.
the very accent that was supposed to kill his career becomes his trademark.
Yeah.
Impossible to imitate. The physique that was too much becomes the reason he's the only believable person for certain roles.
He stopped trying to be a smaller version of someone else. He committed to being an intensified signature version of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Disrespect often attacks what's most visible about you, what's different.
And the response isn't to hide it. It's to amplify it. Make that differentiator so loud and so consistent that it becomes your brand. The liabilities become assets because no one else can offer what you offer. He basically forced Hollywood to build a new box that only he could fit in.
So the actionable step for the listener starts with what we call the feature flip exercise.
Right. This is a writing exercise. You take the trait that gets mocked, your accent, your non-traditional background, your super specialized niche, and you finish this sentence. This becomes an advantage when
Can you give an example?
Sure. My hyper-specialized technical skill becomes an advantage when the problem requires a depth that a generalist simply cannot deliver. You find the context where your flaw is actually a superpower.
And then you have to stop hiding and start branding.
You pick that one differentiator, and you own it on purpose. And consistency is the key. Consistency is what turns weird into recognizable. It shifts the story from what's wrong with them to that's their signature, that's why they're unique.
And finally, you have to create your own role.
Don't wait for the gatekeepers to give you permission. Build a portfolio, a platform, a service that specifically rewards your unique strengths. If they say your niche is too small, double down and build the best platform in the world for that tiny, lucrative niche. The system that mocks your difference can't reward it. You have to build the system that does. If they call it a flaw, you make it your trademark.
That brings us to our wrap-up. Let's do a quick synthesis of these 5 critical moves for everyone listening.
Okay, so 5 conversion strategies to take you from feeling slighted to actively growing. First, the Jordan Principle.
Renaming the rejection. You turn that emotional verdict into cold, hard data.
Second, the Boyle Principle. Make them listen. Focus entirely on undeniable output that forces them to recalibrate their assumptions.
Third, the Brady Principle. Hold the number. Use a concrete marker, your 199, as a container for that fuel, turning triggers into reps.
Fourth, the Johnson Principle. Claim your seat. Don't argue for your worth. Argue strategically for your access to the rooms where decisions are made.
And fifth, the Schwarzenegger Principle. Turn flaws into a signature. You weaponize your difference. You flip what they mock into the asset that defines your unique brand.
That's the roadmap.
So, if someone is listening right now and they're feeling this, what are the 3 non-negotiable micro steps they should take, like today?
Okay, start small, but start active. To rewire that old thought process, first, name your 199. What is the most concrete, factual receipt of a recent slight? A score. A number of times you were passed over. Write it down. That's your container.
Okay, number 2.
Second, write your feature flip sentence. Take the thing you're trying to hide and define exactly how it becomes an advantage in a specific context.
And the third and final step.
Schedule your recurring, undeniable practice. 20 minutes is enough to start, but it has to be non-negotiable. This is your dedicated time to work only on the exact skill your critic is betting against. Consistency is the only proof that matters in the long run.
And that's the system. Rename their rejection into your routine, and then you just let your results do the talking.
Exactly. You force the world to adjust to your new standard. And that brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with.
Go for it.
The most profound success isn't really about the satisfaction of proving other people wrong. That's temporary. It's about using that initial sting of disrespect to build a personal system of execution that's so powerful, so consistent, and so self-driven that you just no longer require or even notice anyone else's belief.
You divorce your effort from external validation.
Completely. And so the question for you is this. What total freedom does that kind of true self-ignition buy you in the long run? Think about the risks you could finally take, the things you could try to build, if your effort became entirely dependent on your own standards and no one else's.